Hey everyone, TDR in Chicago at the Benzinga Canna Capital Conference. Shad Dale's here. Big day as SAFEbanking is out of committee. We welcome in our two experts, Rob Seacrest. He is the co-manager and president of the Forest Capital Group and also a political broadcaster. Good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me. We're glad to be here today.
Yeah, pretty exciting, huh? Good to see Anthony Barrow.
Good to be here.
I
Waiting
know.
for this for a while.
A lot of sentiment, positive sentiment, gents, here this morning. We've already got some positive news. What should people make of this announcement this morning, Rob? And what can they anticipate? Like, yes, it's past 14-9. So what can they anticipate next?
Yeah, so I think it's first and most important for people to understand what did happen today. And today, what we had happen was the SAFEbanking has passed the committee vote in the Senate, and so this does not mean that SAFEbanking is passed. Now,
Right.
From here, it gets scheduled for a floor vote. And then from there, it needs to still pass on the House side. So I think what is different about this time than every other time that it's passed on the House side is that it's never gotten passed in the Senate, and that both the House and the Senate, prior to the bill coming through or the legislation coming through, had already agreed on what the general terms were. So it doesn't necessarily need to be reconciled between the House and the Senate. It should be relatively the same bill on both the House and the Senate. So they don't bring a vote to a committee unless they know that they've got it all the way through. So I think that I'm cautiously optimistic this time. You guys we've spoken many times, and I said I don't think we've got it. I think that this time everybody is signaling that they've got it. Our contacts were telling us that Schumer was responding immediately, and our contacts were telling us that they could revert on Section 10 to the previous language if necessary. So all of that bore out is true, and I think that we've got a good shot. And We'll talk with Cory Garner later today, who was the co-sponsor of the States Act back when Mitch McConnell was the head of the Senate under the Trump administration. So it'll be good to get a comparison contrast there.
Cautiously optimistic is a term that's being used everywhere here, but I think I don't want to speculate, but I am speculating. There's still with the cautiously optimistic. There's a lot of confidence still in the room, is there not?
Yeah, I mean, the confidence I think has been instilled. I mean, it's looking like we do have momentum. I mean, Rob's bang on. I mean, the stock market would tell you otherwise. Looks like it was a little bit of a sell the news event today. But at the same time, you're right. If the political will isn't there, they wouldn't have brought it to committee and get it moving.
If you remember from when we spoke with Dana Rohrabacher, and that you asked him, what is it that's necessary to get something passed, legislation passed? And you got to get that upwelling from the ground up. And I think that now we've got that. And so now it's not whether it's going to pass, it's what is the iteration that's going to pass and how long is it going to take. So I think that now the things that could stop it or slow it down are more process oriented, meaning that we might have a continuing resolution on the budget passing that could slow some of these. There's things that might take priority, especially when you get over to the House, which is working on the budget.
Hey Rob, what would you say to people that are, I guess, thinking about the looming government shutdown potentially getting in the way of this? So you think it could be a potential roadblock?
Look, they always do continuing resolution. It's this. The Republicans have there's not a big majority within the Republican caucus that is driving. So when you have a fractured amount of parties, it's much more difficult to drive what their main Republican objectives are. So there's just 4 or 5 vote majority there. So it's very thin. So when you have that thin of a margin, those the individuals have a much bigger disproportionate effect on what things are able to be passed, as opposed to if you had 50 majority, each vote doesn't matter so much. And I think those are the things that people forget.
Okay.
Do you think this gets fast tracked at all? I know there's a lot of stuff that has to be worked out, but we've talked about how Schumer, they need to get something to get some sort of positive momentum going. Where do you see this kind of unfolding?
The fast tracking is what is it comes down to where every time that James' staff is sending stuff to Schumer, they're getting responses immediate.
Why is that, you think?
Well, I think that the tell there is the velocity of the responses means that there's a political will to get this done.
Yeah.
So that was what I had told you previously. That's the biggest tell to me. If Schumer's staff is responding immediately as quickly as possible, and that was different than what's happened in the previous times, that means that there's a will to get this done, and that's what I would be looking at.
Dana Rohrabacher was saying the Blumenauer-Rohrabacher Amendment was established in, what was it, 2014? Right, and initially they brought it to the was it 2003?
That was the first time it passed. I forget when the first time he brought it that it didn't pass for many times, 2003 or 4, something like that.
And we discussed SAFEbanking's
10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary.
Chuck is literally tweeting right now, though. Let's get this thing passed. Let's get this thing moved. It's time to move it. We're at a committee. It needs to be done.
What do you think this does for their political party amongst the American people if they get this passed?
I mean, I think it's like we've been saying. It's a bipartisan win. I mean, both parties on each side of the aisle can claim a small victory in this. And I mean, I think it's a big net positive.
Is it a priority?
It frees up a lot of political bandwidth.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. So what we're seeing right now on the equity side, as we look, I don't know when we last checked, but it's relatively flat. Has there been somewhat of a
about
pullback?
flat. I think everything's down about 2 to 3%. Canopy was up 10% on the open. It's down like 2%. MSOS was up, I think, flat to 2%. Cureleaf was up 5%. I mean, it's looking like retail's exhausted. I mean, institutional capital is not going to come until this is actually signed and done, and it just looks like an exhausted rally.
And it's a long process. So we still got to go to the floor for the Senate. We still got to get the House side, and then you got to reconcile those two differences between those bills if there are any. Then you got to have the president sign it, and then you have to have the comment period. It's a long way. This won't come out until probably 2025. But the sentiment is the bill is being passed and that legislation getting passed. Once that passed, it does take time to roll out, just like the Farm Bill.
Yeah. I know you've got a panel to go, so you've got to run as we're welcoming people in. Just behind the camera here, we've got managing partner of Floors, Travis Goad, who's actually with us. Have fun at the meeting. Say hi to obviously Jim Seymour for us. Good to see you, sir.
How's it
We
going?
welcome all these people in. Good to see you. How are things?
Things great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's first off, as we talked a lot about Washington in the news this morning, but for viewers that can't make this event this week, at a previous Benzinga conferences that you've attended and some of the experience that you had so far, are you seeing a lot of optimism right now amongst the space of conversations you've had here this morning already?
Yeah, I do think there's optimism. I think if you're in this space, and you're living and breathing it every day, as Rob pointed out, nothing's ever gotten this far. We've never gotten to a committee vote. We've never have the senators come out and really endorse this in a way. And so, there's been nothing but negative catalysts in cannabis for probably the last 18 months. And so we got two extremely positive catalysts with the HHS recommendation and then the SAFEbanking traction. And so I think some people are still a little beat up past experiences, but this seems like it has legs. Yeah.
Yeah.
How does this affect the Pelorus, the Pelorus model, if at all, with these things passing and getting down the pike?
Yeah, so we're set up to thrive, and if it doesn't pass as well, we've had a successful business throughout. But this is huge if it goes through, because we'll benefit just like everybody else will benefit. Every time we've accessed capital markets, we did the first cannabis securitization, we did the first corporate bond for a debt fund, and every time we've had to pay a cannabis premium ourselves as to where our deal's priced relative to non-cannabis transactions. And so in this world, we think we'll have better access to capital market. Our cost of capital will come down, which we can ultimately pass on to people in the industry. And then, it's great if you can get rid of 280E, which is the biggest issue facing the industry. It's a materially credit positive event.
Speaking of the securitization, I mean, that's like a truly institutional product. I mean, do you think that we start to see a trend of other issuers in the space start to copy what you guys did with the securitization of the cannabis assets?
I definitely think people are going to continue to try to copy what we're doing. What we went out of our way to basically set up the capital markets in a way that other mortgage REITs typically have access to, but because we're cannabis, we haven't. And so we're the first. We always try to be the leader and create that framework. Yeah. But sure, I do think people will try to copy us going forward.
I think that speaks to the growth of the industry, though. It's been 60 days since you announced the first securitization. That obviously is going to attract, because less risk for institutions. And I think when it comes to equity investors and a lot of our audience, they want to know when a lot of the smart money is coming in. So how valuable has that announcement been as far as the growth of the industry from 60 days ago for those that may not be aware or don't really understand what a securitization is?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, to give everybody an idea, is CMBS, your traditional commercial mortgage-backed securities, is what that's part of. It's a $500 billion market. So there's $500 billion in current issuance outstanding. That's a tremendous pool of capital that we want to bring into this side of the cannabis real estate space, and give the section of institutional investors that can participate in those, the format and the structures that they need to see in order to participate. So for borrowers, it's huge. It's more capital coming in the space, ultimately will lower our cost of capital so that, we can pass that on to our borrowers, but to drive returns to our investors and continue to, grow our firm.
Yeah. What are you seeing over there? What are you reading?
I was retweeting the live stream on my my personal account, making sure we get reach on it.
So we're still seeing somewhat of it's relatively flat. You think we're exhausted amongst investors right now?
I think we're going to trade sideways. My honest opinion is I think we're going to trade sideways for a while. I mean, we've got earnings season coming up, which arguably could be more exciting than this passing. We then have Florida adult use conversion potentially going on the ballot. Ohio adult use conversion potentially coming. There could be momentum in PA. I mean, there's a lot of catalysts outside of this, and I think a lot of people are forgetting the rally that got us here was on the back of HHS. It was not on the back of SAFE.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we have plenty of catalysts to go. I mean, the businesses are also going to improve from a fundamental perspective, but I mean, it looks like the capital that is being deployed into the sector is exhausted to an extent.
Timing's everything. So they obviously rode the coattails of the HHS announcement, which I can understand why people were happy.
There was a short squeeze and equities drove up. If you looked at MSOS was moving, but the underlyings weren't moving. MSOS can't move without action in those names.
Well, you've seen some of the resurgence amongst certain stocks the last 30 days. Some of the questions and topics that we've discussed is, we'll trade sideways, but do you think this is the new benchmark as to where we're at right now?
As far as you don't think it'll go down from here?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? It's tough to. There's still so many issues with the way these stocks trade, specifically custody issues that keep institutional investors out. And there's a lot of things on the equity side that need to be addressed. And I think in conjunction with HHS, potential rescheduling and SAFE, and then what ultimately be a memo that has to come from Garland, I think they may address some of the uplisting issues. They may address some of the custody issues and all of these things that really drive the volatility in the space.
Yeah.
And so since those haven't been addressed yet, I'm not going to call.
No, I know, but you're a former hedge fund manager in New York. What do you think is the number one question they're asking or watching right now pertaining to this space?
280E. Oh, you mean for institutions to come into the space? It's liquidity. I mean, there's no liquidity in any of these names. I mean, most of the CSE names, they trade less than 0.5% of their market cap on any given day. That's unusual, and so that you can't take large positions if you can't get in and out. So I think uplisting fixes that. Getting on NASDAQ, getting on TSX, getting on the New York Stock Exchange. So if there was something to address, would be material.
So I think this is going to be an interesting test for Jason Wild and TerraSend. I mean, being uplisted on the TSX, being uplisted on a senior exchange, if they do start to act differently on the backside of this, and I think it's a testament to the uplisting thesis.
Yeah,
or at least. Hopefully we can see something with that name.
Where is Jason?
You should be around here somewhere.
Is he around here? Got to get him on. I know he'll be around. We'll be doing live streams actually all day. But look, this isn't the complete and full answer as to what we're looking for, but it's a step in the right direction here today, right?
It's huge. I mean, 280E is by far the biggest issue facing the industry, and then giving some legislation that says, hey, the banks can work with us, etc. We think that's huge. Does it get us everything we need? Is it a legalization event? No. But if you think about it, you're getting probably 60% of what people would like to see addressed, and the biggest issue potentially removed if this goes through. These are wholesale positives.
Back to you, securitization. What's the feedback been like the first 60 days?
It's been great. People are excited. It's definitely put us in a whole new category with capital markets investors, where they'll say, wow, how did you get that done? It ups credibility factor with these big institutional investors, and that we're able to figure that out, and so it's been fantastic, and we're excited. We think it's a tool we're going to use on a go-forward basis.
For those still trying to learn and understand, with the securitization and the access to more capital, walk us through how this actually benefits the overall industry.
So it brings more capital into the space, and a securitization is a pooled vehicle where you issue a bond off of a certain subset of collateral, in this case loans, and it's term, non-mark to market, financing, non-recourse financing. Effectively, it's what we call structural leverage. So it's a very unique. It's not a unique structure. They do it in all these other industries, but it's unique to cannabis. And so we think it's going to be a critical tool on going forward.
Yeah,
so
of course.
One, it brings in more capital. Two, it lowers our cost of capital. Because we can sell bonds at a cheaper rate, which allows us to pass that savings on to borrowers in this space and ultimately set up to continue to be the number one non-bank lender in cannabis.
I can't imagine the phone calls you're getting right now for people that want money.
Yes, we're getting a lot of phone calls, and I think these catalysts are help because to ultimately, we lend 1% of what you need. And so people have to raise equity to come up with the balance typically.
Yeah.
And this last year has been a tough market to raise equity capital, specifically in cannabis.
Just a little.
Yeah,
right?
just a little. So what we're seeing, I think that some of these positives have more equity is going to come into the space.
Yeah.
All this stuff will be positive to deal flows and the industry growth overall.
All right, gents. Well, for our viewers, you just want to obviously get an update as to what happened earlier this morning regarding the safe banking at a committee and a 14-9 vote in favor. And then what next steps that we can anticipate. So we're going to be doing a live stream throughout the day here today. We're going to log off now. We'll be back this afternoon with some big announcements, obviously with Corey Gardner, some political aspects, and we'll get some feedback with some of the big MSO names and just give you an understanding of what's going on here in Chicago. Gents, enjoy the rest of the day networking. We'll catch back up with you later. How's that sound?
Talk soon.
All right.
Thanks. Bye.
All right.
Thanks. Red button, top right.
Good stuff.